Here we go. Okay, I think we're live, mate. Hopefully, we've pressed all the right buttons. Matt is a genius at this kind of stuff, so hopefully I'll do him justice today. But if you could drop us a message in the comments just below us, that'd be great. Just to let us know that everybody is out there and you can hear everything. So welcome to tonight's session. I want to thank Liz and Matt last week for last week's session. So thank you very much for that. The sessions are available. All of the previous ones are available on YouTube. They're also available on the Facebook group as well. And we've also got them on a podcast as well. Oh, we are live. Catherine's there. Good. Perfect. Thanks, Catherine. So there's loads of different ways that you can keep in touch. And I will try to remember that this goes out on podcast and describe pictures and include people's names so that those of you that are listening to the podcast know what's going on as well. So my name is Mike Grice. I'm the Education Director at Movement Therapy Education. And we have Gary Benson with us as well. Hi, Gary.
Hi, Mike. Hope everybody's well this evening. Thanks to Liz Bailey for her insight into, working in musical theatre. I've known Liz for over a decade now, and, she's the most flexible person that I ever met. We once did a hamstring length test, and she basically put a foot behind her head. It was absolutely amazing to watch. I can't even get mine off the floor sometimes, but really enthusiastic Liz is, and a credit to her industry as well as ours. She started off as a sports therapist. So this evening, what we're doing is a little bit of a catch up from last time, where we were speaking about employment opportunities for graduate therapists, and we diversified a little bit into soft tissue therapists as well. But if I can, I'll just start with an update about what's happening behind the STA scenes, if you like. So Jake, who's been you may have noticed on the STA groups that there are a lot of prize draws coming out, a lot of new working relationships with publishers, book publishers, products and service providers, medical kit providers, etc. So Jake's working really hard on developing that side of it for the member benefits, and doing all of the admin, processing all of the renewals, etc. But some of the feedback in the surveys that we've done over the past 12 months or so is that members wanted us to move away from PayPal. It's become quite clunky. It's become really difficult to get in touch with PayPal. So we've been working hard, and we've set up a new system where we'll be able to pay our membership fees with debit or credit cards through Stripe. So that's going to go live next week, and at the moment I'm working every evening on changing all of the wording on all of the references to PayPal will have to be changed. So it won't affect those people who have got a recurring subscription through PayPal at the moment, but in time we will be moving over. Other feedback that we got as well was the renewal process. Everybody has to pay the renewal fee. They have to provide a CPD statement, and it's just a simple statement exampled on the STA website, www.thesta.co.uk. Look at the membership tab, scroll down to the membership renewal and the CPD page, and it gives you all the information on how to renew. Again, I'm going to make a plea to every single STA member. Please check your junk mail. Please check your text messages. Please check your voicemails, and please check your Facebook Messenger. We are trying our hardest to get in touch with you, and we're getting lots of bounce backs and unanswered messages. So please get in touch. If you haven't heard from us a while, just get in touch with Jake or myself at the office. Scott's been working. Evening, Scott. I saw you in there. Scott's been working on developing a resource pack, and we're trying to cover every eventuality with a resource pack, and it's growing and growing, but that should be out within the next few weeks, so that's really good. Look forward to getting that on. and also as well, the just going back, if I may, to the CPD, there will be an interactive form that you can fill in now. So instead of just writing a statement, everybody will be required to fill in what CPD they're doing. It's as I say, it's interactive. It accumulates your hours for you, and we're just working on an example page that we can put at the front to show people how to do it. Just remembering that September and October is our annual audit time, where every week in September and October we randomly select 10% of our members and we ask them to prove their CPD statement by providing the necessary evidence. So we'll be gearing up for that later this summer. Yeah, so that's all I've got, Mike, really. So
Right.
we've asked for questions. I've had a number of questions sent through.
Yep.
Some of which I would like to put to you, if I may, and also to get some member input. So I'm not going to give names with these questions because some of them are sent anonymously, are asked to remain anonymous. So the first one that came in earlier on in the week was, when you're creating your business listing or services on your website or your booking system, do you list your individual treatments or generic appointments? And this is really apparent for you because you work in a multidiscipline environment. So do you list the individual therapies, the services, or do you just book in for an appointment and get a little bit of a history of what's going on, and do you allocate the right therapist to the right client?
Yeah, so we've done it a couple of different ways, and the way that we did it when we had a smaller team was we would have a generic form that any patient would fill in, and on that form they could request a specific person, or they could just say anybody within the team. And it doesn't matter who I see, kind of thing. And then they would then list the kind of treatments that they would be interested in, and then and also give us a little bit of their history as well. And I basically used to make an educated guess as to who the best person in the team would be for them to see. That was obviously quite time consuming, and I would have to vet every single one coming through. So if you've got a small team, then it's fine. But as the team grew, and we've got 10 therapists now, and they all do slightly different things. So what we tend to do now is when the guys join the team, we ask them to focus on a niche. So who's their ideal patient? Who do they want to see? And then we then advertise them targeting towards that ideal person. So, and obviously that depends on experience, it depends on qualification level, and interest as well, because you obviously want to see people that that interest you intellectually as well as kind of getting people through the door. So yeah, we've done it a couple of different ways depending on where we were, really. Yeah. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, really, isn't it? Because it leads into another question that came in earlier in the week about. It crosses over into a couple of questions, actually. So one of them was, how important in our industry is it to work within our specific remit? Now, what we've done with the STA Web Chat podcast over the past 15, 16 months is try and identify a number of referral pathways. So we're not wholly talking about soft tissue therapy, sports therapy. We're looking at things outside, and one of the messages that comes across to me frequently is that, take Dr. Deepak Ramdevan from last week, from a couple of weeks ago. He said, you are the first people to see these clients with the lumbar pain, the non-specific lower back pain. You are the people to see, people presenting with a groin strain before they go to the GP, before they go to get into the NHS system. So, the question about remit is that if we can identify what our remit is and we stick to that, but also as well, it gives us scope then and knowledge and a referral pathway for things outside our remit. Now,
Yep.
you know, that's for a single practitioner like myself working in a lone clinic environment. You know, in a multidisciplinary environment, then how does that work? You know, you mentioned that people have specific skills, but, you know, do you have a soft tissue therapist, you know, and does the osteopath refer to the soft tissue therapist for a bit of a back rub, for want of a better phrase, and then does you go back to the osteopath? How does it work in practice?
Yeah, so it is exactly that with us. And I guess one of the reasons why we tried to have a team that specialized in different areas is because we didn't want an environment where you were treading on other people's toes. So, I mean, some people have got very similar interests, but on the whole, they are different. So, for example, Chris Tiley, who did the Never Too Old to Lift web chat a few weeks ago, he's one of my physios. That's what I say. He's mine. He works in my clinic, but he's a great colleague to have, because if I get any patients through who fit that kind of age bracket, and I mean, initially it depends. If I may just say, do you know what, Chris is the best person to see for your initial consultation, let alone a follow up. But if someone comes through to me on initial consultation and I think, do you know what, you're going to really benefit from seeing Chris, then I then set up the communication with Chris, and then he then contacts the patient directly and books them in with him. Quite often we're in the clinic at the same time, so that's ideal. So then I would introduce Chris while we're on the gym floor, and so then the patient knows who he is, and obviously got that connection already. So yeah, I guess the thing is to, and it depends, because I'm you know, over 10 years down the line now, and I've got enough of a patient client base to be able to do that. And I think initially when I first started, I didn't have a big team. It was just me. So similar to what you were saying before. And I would have just tried to do everything because I had the time to do everything. But now I don't have that time. We streamline the referrals a lot better. Well, I hope we do. And yeah, there's we do have a soft tissue therapist. We do have someone who only wants to do that. That's what their kind of role is, which is brilliant for us, because we get a lot of patients come in that just want soft tissue therapy. So that's great. And if anything ever does crop up with that person that they think, well, actually, this might be beyond what I can deal with, then they just get referred back to one of the clinicians. So we've got a lot of to in and fro in going on. Definitely. Yeah, it works really well.
Yeah, and I suppose one of the downsides for, you know, individual therapists is that, you know, from the members I speak to on a sort of daily, weekly basis, you know, they always initially talk about their competitors as a rival, you know. So you might live in a small market town, for example, you have a niche, and you see everybody else as a direct rival. And, you know, even in my previous business, you know, my MO, if you like, was always to make contact with those people around me, ask what their specialisms were, explain what mine were, and then to build that sort of referral pathway, cross-referral pathway in the local community or the local area. Now, what you've done, you've taken that stage further and you've built that referral network within one small hub. You know, some of our members that, you know, they don't want to do that, and you correctly identified that, you know, and that somebody, and your word was only wanted to do soft tissue, and I think that's really valuable. And some of the things that happened, you know, a couple of months ago with the announcement of level 3 therapists being cast aside, if you like, without a viable alternative. You know, it was a commercially driven alternative. You know, if you want to stay a member of us, you must do this course. And I thought, you know, that was extremely disrespectful to those people who like being a soft tissue therapist, and they like doing their pre and post event and their maintenance massages and some remedial techniques. And, you know, that probably makes up 50% of our membership, if I'm honest, and we have diversified, as we've said, from the foundation degree sports therapists we were set up to represent, and because of the level of service and support that we gave to those people, then we have now taken on board some more soft tissue therapists. So interestingly, again, and this links on, one of the questions that came in earlier was about how do you market to your ideal client? Now, you've explained that I would imagine, just have a general clinic advert. You've got all the resources with you, but the inference from the question was that if you are a level 3 sports massage therapist that we've just spoken about, then your remit, if your qualification was after 2014, is pre and post event massage and, in inverted commas, maintenance massage. What we shouldn't be doing is working with remedial effect, if you like, because that's our qualification doesn't extend that far. Now, the marketing question was, are you getting the correct type of client? Now, if you're a level 3 sports massage therapist and you're advertising for pre and post event and maintenance massage, then I argue that you might be. Mm-hmm. But if you're a graduate sports therapist or a personal trainer or a higher level soft tissue therapist, then if you list your services that was mentioned in the first question, how many people think that your services are important? How many of us don't make a connection with the client in the first instance, which then gets them into our clinic, and then we can explain or we can choose the services which best fit their presenting condition?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because again, I've just seen Becky's comment there, so I'll come back to that in a second. But one thing that we've found is that, because we talk, this podcast is great, this web chat is great, because we talk all about evidence-based practice, but patients don't really know what that is, and they don't understand the language behind it. And sometimes us as therapists don't understand it either. So it's an emerging kind of field. But what we wanted to do was project our clinic as this kind of pain science-led, evidence-led clinic, which is, I hope, what we are. But the problem is the general public don't know anything about that. So they're not looking for that. They're looking for a sports massage. They're looking for an osteopath or physiotherapy appointment or sports therapy appointment. They won't search for those things that we think are important. So we then had to completely change our marketing, and Dan Williams was the guy behind it, and we completely switched our focus so that we would advertise the things that people were looking for, and then when they come into the clinic, they would then see that we're different. And it had to be that way around, because otherwise they wouldn't come in. Because if they saw, your kind of explanation of things that were a little bit kind of highbrow, for want of a better word, and then it didn't resonate with what they thought they needed, and then the next clinic along did, and that's how they advertised, and they would go to them instead. So we've had to kind of we've had to change a lot of the wording that we use in the marketing, so that it appeals to those kind of clients. Does that make sense? All right.
Yeah, I mean, if I can just use a sort of an anecdote about, my own practice from 2000 and whatever to when I stopped working in clinical practice. The first thing I did is I got a card off Vistaprint which showed a biomechanical picture of a knee, and I put my name and my allegiance to my professional association and my what I did, and it was unsuccessful, and I went and sought some guidance from a marketing specialist, and going back now 16 years, they said, how are you making a connection with your client? And I said, well, I'm telling him what I can do. and they said, well, things like introductory offers, they never work. People who pay an introductory offer will never want to pay the full price because the service is exactly the same. Why should they? So what he asked me to do was to go away and decide what my niche would be. And I thought, well, my niche is, anybody who's got an injury, I can help them. I've never fallen into the trap of trying to fix people, but I can always help them and facilitate improvement. And at the time, I was working quite closely with a golf professional. Our sons both played county cricket, and we used to sit and chat about things. And he would tell me how he coached clients. And I said, well, what if a person can't rotate through 90 degrees, into their backswing? And I got really interested in golf, and I'm still fanatic about golf anyway. And yes, Claire, I'll mention, how hard can it be, golf, eh? But I got a picture of a card, and it was simply a golf ball held between a thumb and forefinger. And I said, do you want to hit this 25 yards further? ? My phone didn't stop ringing from high handicap golfers who perceived that hitting a ball 25 yards further made them a better golfer.
Exactly.
I alienated low handicap golfers who always looked to break 90 or break 80. So I had to have a different tack for those. Any members who are listening, the takeaway message should be was always review your marketing. If you leave 10 business cards at the cricket club, and you go back there a month later and there are still 10 there, you haven't appealed to anybody. You haven't made that connection. So does it have to have a picture of a cricketer on there to, or a rugby ball for a rugby player, or, do we have to go that simple with our athletes? So marketing, it is an ongoing thing. And I bet you set aside time every week for your marketing.
Yeah. I mean, we've, well, one of the other questions we had was about burnout. And so we were really good before COVID. We were really good at setting aside every Wednesday we'd have a meeting. And then we really haven't done that since COVID hit. At the beginning, those first couple of months, I mean, we're lucky because we've got a clinical team, so we didn't have any restrictions imposed on us. Well, really from the beginning. So we had about 2 months where we shut, and then really from last June we have been open in some guys. Now we're starting to get back to normal again, but I'm at the stage now. Well, basically last year was just survival, and now I'm getting busy, back to normal again. I need a holiday. I'm
you can't go anywhere.
Stage now where I'm things are just getting back to normal, and I just feel like, oh, thank God. But also I'm feeling it myself. We've had to check. Well, we've had to spin a lot. So we've first of all, we invested in and invested our time into learning how to do telehealth. And and a horrible word, but the virtual appointments. And obviously now that's not as many coming through. In fact, I can't remember the last time I've done one. Now we're seeing patients face to face again, and we're getting back up to pre-COVID kind of figures. So it's kind of like you've gone through that really hard slog, and now I'm ready for a bit of a break.
And is it about saying no to clients? Because especially if we're a new therapist, if we've just graduated or just qualified last year or during COVID or even this year, unfortunately, because of what we are led to believe by our training provider in 75% of cases, that we can fix everybody. Mm-hmm. So we never reflect and say, actually, you're better off going and seeing X, Y, and Z than seeing me. So I think there is a tendency for new therapists to not say no.
No, I completely get that. And it depends on the stage you are in your business. And I think that, again, that's the real handy thing with having a bigger team. So what I've done to save myself is I now just do 2 clinic days, and then the rest of the time I've focused on the education side. And I made that decision when we came back from last year, and that's made a massive difference. And because the thing is, I mean, if I went back to any more than that now, I would be doing new patients a disservice, because I don't really have the time to follow new patients through with a good enough plan. And I would much rather that they see someone else in the team who's going to really look after them, because they do have the time, than trying to fudge through. And I know, again, you know, I am in that position where I can do that because of the people that are there. And I know it would be difficult if it's just you on your own. But yeah, I think if you're on your own, it's going to be a bit tough. But if you do have a bit of a team, it's time to funnel people through. Obviously, you need to guide people towards the right kind of person in your team. But you need to think about that patient as well. And yeah, just make sure that they're going to get the level of service that you would want to give them. I'm just going to mention Becky's question because it has been there for a while. So Becky Carroll, she said, I had a lady in the other week. I think this question might go over I'll read it all out. So I had a lady come in the other week who came in with 2 separate injuries. She was after advice on both, which I did. She was surprised when my fee was the same as it was previously for a single injury. Apparently, a previous therapist charged per injury. And this was a new one to my ears. It's a new one to mine as well. I've never known that before. Wow. I mean, I had someone today where, because we obviously screen people before they come in, I did take on a new patient today. It's my first one in a while. And it was a late. I usually get people that are quite difficult patients, which is great, really challenging. And I love that. And yes, I had this patient come in, and I knew that from phoning her beforehand and before we booked her in, that I was going to need a bit more time with her, because talking about two injuries, there's about 5 or 6 things going on. So that we had to, I planned it so that she was in just before my lunch. So if it needed to run over, then I had time that I could use. And I mean, she even said after an hour, she said, have you got someone else in after me? And I was like, don't worry, it's all sort. And we had a really good session. But you need to kind of plan those sessions in. And I certainly didn't charge her for multiple injuries. I think that's crazy.
And you know, which came first, the chicken or the egg? You know, did they have a sprained ankle, and as a result of that, you know, walking and limping, had they got a lower back pain? Before I go on to follow that on, Fiona Notman's chipped in with saying, yes, we have to sometimes say no and take a break so that we can come back from a holiday refreshed. Get yourself on a holiday, she says. I've joined you from my holiday in Malta and returned refreshed, ready to start on clients again. Let's hope, Fiona, when you get back, you don't have to isolate.
Well, do you know what? Next week.
Sorry.
Yeah, next week I'm in Bournemouth. I'm going to Costa del Bournemouth for a week, and I'm so looking forward to it.
I think you definitely have to isolate coming back from Bournemouth.
I won't be going to the beach at busy times, that's for sure.
No.
Actually, I feel sorry for Matt actually if he is listening tonight, because he has got some terrible rain. I don't think he's camping as well. So bless.
Everybody should experience, thunderstorms in a tent at least once in their life, and then you can realise that hotels are a lot better.
Rite of passage, definitely.
Absolutely.
I posted out the question to some of my guys in my group as well, and let's have a look. It was Chris Kitson got back to me with a question. Let me just see if I can get it up here. So he was asking about, if you don't mind me putting this one in, is asking about what is your opinion on how much research therapists should do reading per week, per month, or per year, and why? So I'll put that over to you first, Gary.
Okay, so this is a conversation that Scott and I have had recently. You know, if we're looking at CPD, you know, if we've got a graduate sports therapist who's providing me with a CPD statement, I would be expecting to see some self-directed research in there because they're academically trained. I wouldn't necessarily expect it from somebody who is a sports massage therapist. I would like them to you know, note down some and reference some of these web chats and podcasts, so that, you know, it demonstrates that they are learning, you know, above their skill set, if you like, at the moment, and it might pique an interest. You know, and just a classic example is the endometriosis and the women's pelvic health ones with Deb Thurlow Rowley and Gronya Donnelly, respectively. You know, they both had great feedback, and people have come to me saying, as a result of listening to those, you know, they are now changing their marketing so that because they're really interested in working in women's pelvic health, for example. Now,
Brilliant.
One of those is only, you know, a sports massage therapist, in her words, but she is now, you know, researching what training is out there. She's researching and looking at research papers into, you know, the missing link. I think Debs was talking about the missing link and taking 7 years to get diagnosed with endometriosis. So yeah, I think we all have an obligation for every day to be a school day. But I think it has to be relevant and respective of their qualification. So the higher level we achieve in our education, the more likely we should be doing our own research.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I kind of we see that a bit on social media with the kind of bashing of therapists as well. And well, what comes across as bashing, I'm sure it's not intended to be that way. But we have to remember that a large majority of the people that do the qualification in this country, they're not at degree level, so they would have never have done research methods. They wouldn't know how to search the literature, so they're guided by their course materials and their tutors. And I think we have to cut them a bit of slack sometimes. And it's something that they will have to, if they want to and they feel that they need to, then something that they will have to evolve into. It's, I think, some of the arguments, some of the words that are used are sometimes they go over my head, to be honest. And I have to read about something because I'm like, well, I've never really heard that before, but at least I know where to look. Whereas some people don't even know where to look. So yeah, I think that's a really good point.
So just on you know, future training, progression training, etc. One of the questions came in about first aid. And you know, a lot of people have struggled over the pandemic to get their first aid updated, and so what we did back towards the summer of last year, we said, look, if your first aid expires and you don't feel safe attending a course that has a practical element of CPR and has defibrillator use, then don't do it. If you're put into that situation, I guarantee that you will react. You will go back to your training, even though might have been 3.5 years ago and not 3 years ago. So what we've said is that if you are due to renew or if you're due to join as an STA member, we are not enforcing the first aid evidence at this time. What we are saying is that September and October is our audit period. You have until then to get your first aid evidence into us. And the minimum standard is it's about a 5 or 6 hour course, and it's breathing, bleeding, breaks and burns with practical element of CPR, life-saving and defibrillator use. So that is what we accept. But the question that came in was, I want to work pitch side. Will my phase 1, for example, or will my first aid at work suffice? So what's your view on that then, Mike? If we're working pitch side?
Yeah, I don't think it does. I don't think the syllabus covers the kind of injuries that you're going to face, potentially face pitch side. There are some courses out there that include an element of concussion management and spinal airway management alongside the EFAW. But even then, I wouldn't consider that a pitch side course. I would kind of it's filled in some of the blanks. I think you would need to do a proper pitch side qualification so that you've got peace of mind. And you don't cover anything to do with spinal management on a normal EFAW. So, and that's obviously going to be the biggest risk, especially if you're watching rugby from pitch side. Then I would definitely recommend that. I mean, if we think about EFAW, the Emergency First Aid at Work course, it's designed for working in an office. It's just completely different environment. I mean, some things you can obviously transfer over, but there's so many things you need to think about in terms of your first aid risk assessments when you're working on pitch side.
Yeah. So, my view on that then mirrors yours, Mike. What I always advise members is that depending on your sport, the sports governing body will have a minimum standard. Now, if you're working at a certain level or a certain step of the sport, there will be a first aid course which is aligned to that level or that step. Now, we've got a really good relationship with the FA, and our graduate members can access the FA higher level courses, which are required when you're working at the higher level of football. The RFU, they tend to like the RFU courses. The problem here is they're not being delivered in the numbers that are required. So, what I'm saying to members is get the best one you can for the money that you can afford. But also as well, if you are working pitch side, again, recognize your remit. If something happens which you're not trained to deal with, put your hands up and say, look, I'm not qualified to deal with this. Let's get the experts in. So you dial 999.
No, absolutely.
So that's my best advice.
Really good. And just on that as well. So just after the Christian Eriksen cardiac arrest, I did a free refresher training for the use of AED and the basics of CPR for adults. It's on our page. I can share it with the STA group as well. It's about 40 minutes long, and it teaches it from scratch. So if you've never done it before, never looked at anything like that before, then it's a good kind of stepping stone. But if it also can be used as a refresher as well. So I'll share that.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. Online learning was one that a question that came in, and I thought, oh God. There are certain courses that it's appropriate to or acceptable to study online. Blended learning courses, we'll use your course as an example, Mike. I'm sure there is lots of things there, the theoretical content, the assignment, which can be adequately achieved remotely. But if you're sticking needles in people, if you're trying to crack somebody's back, let alone neck, please don't subscribe to a £99 course, because it's uninsurable. That companies out there will go to an insurance company that will insure anything. There are them, that they are out there. If the offers seems too good to be true, it is. We have removed accreditation from some providers where they've moved their whole library online. So my advice is, if it's classed as high risk, if you think it's high risk for you to have that treatment, then it should be face to face, a decent period of study, some pre-course reading, some case studies, and you should have an assessment of your competency in delivering that. I don't think that it's safe to do that online. I don't think you can assess somebody appropriately via Zoom or Microsoft Teams or others. So that's my opinion. Would you comment on that, Mike?
No, I agree. I mean, there was a comment in a sports massage group the other day about CPD training, and I think there's been a bit of a blurring of the lines between CPD and qualification courses, and some people are a bit confused between the two. So I put a comment on there that if your base level qualification covers a similar kind of topic area, then you can add on a CPD. So for me, as an osteo, I could do that online course and I'll just go, oh yeah, forgot how to do that manip. I can do that one again because I've been assessed on it. I've had my competency checked and I'm registered. Whereas if you haven't had that in your base level qualification, then you will struggle to prove competency. And that's the big thing with these courses. There isn't an assessment. Usually there isn't one, and if it is just a multiple choice question paper, then really that's not an adequate assessment for that kind of treatment. So I would agree with that, definitely.
Yeah, so we're avoiding certificates of attendance, certificates of completion for anything we class as high risk. We are having a certificate of competency. So it's usually worth checking with the provider, what do I come out with? It will usually say it on the website, but to just reinforce your point, Mike, about CPD as opposed to qualifications have their set at levels which are or should be aligned to educational standards in England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales. CPD courses, if you see a CPD course that says it's a level 4 or level 5, it's not. It won't meet any of the standards, in line with educational standards. It might be aligned. There might be some skills appropriate to a level 4 or 5, and it might be targeted towards a level 4 or 5 therapist. But generally speaking, CPD should not have a level allocated to it.
Yeah, really good.
One more question that came in, Mike, was, now we're going back to normal, and you might have seen these mass participation events and various concerts and festivals taking place. I've been asked this several times in the past couple of weeks, are there any guidance, or is there any guidance for event work? And yes, there is. The STA members only group on Facebook has a file section in, and the one day dated July the 6th has details about what we should be looking for if we're doing event work. And that is basically that the governing body for that sport has already issued guidance for their medical support staff. The event organizer should be able to furnish you with a risk assessment for every part of the event, and that includes pre and post event massage provision. Or medical provision if that's your area of expertise. So once you've got the sports governing body guidance, once you've got the event organisers risk assessment and guidance documents, you can then produce your own risk assessment. And we are recommending, open air if you can. If you've got a gazebo or a marquee, making sure the sides are off, maintaining distance, really tight infection control procedures. Even though these people have been doing lateral flow testing and etc. and being checked, we all know that that's not foolproof. So do your best to mitigate the risk to yourself, because that's where your risk assessment should start and end, is with your safety. You don't want to pass it on to your family or your clients, so you keep yourself safe, and if you're doing that, I think you'll be okay.
Brilliant.
Any more questions, Mike, from your end?
Yeah, so we've just had so Scott's just said about this is going back to the first aid, I think. So I'm in this predicament at the moment, so need to renew my pitch side qualification, but struggling to find one running that's not on the other side of the country. So just as you were chatting then about that, Gary, I was thinking, well, if you have links with a team that have a doctor or a physio or someone that qualification hasn't expired, so a sports therapist who's still in date, then you could do a session with them as a refresher session, because you should do annual refreshers anyway. So you can document that, and you can put that down in your portfolio so that you've got evidence that you've covered some of the aspects of the pitch side course because you haven't been able to attend the course. I think that might be a good way of kind of plugging that gap, and especially if you've not done anything for 3 years. If it's been that long since you last did your qualification, then definitely worth hooking up with someone who's either just recently qualified or is still in date. Yeah.
Especially because the guidance changes from time to time. If we get somebody new at the head of the sport or new at the head of the first aid, then sometimes things change. How many times have we done 30 compressions and 2 breaths, and now it's staying alive, or is it something else? It always changes. So do your best to get updated, like Mike says.
Yeah, so. This isn't a plug for my courses, but I have been teaching first aid again. We haven't done many this year, but I'll just let you know what I've been doing so that you can ask the same questions of the first aid providers to allay your fears about going on a face-to-face course. So I've got these kind of inflatable mannequins now. So you roll up your own mannequin, and instead of having the hard plastic bodied ones, so I've got 10. So I limit the places to 10, and you have a mannequin each. I've also got these small defib devices that they're from China or something, but they just need a couple of batteries in, and I've got 10 of those as well. So literally, you have your own course. So we can separate everybody, and when you do the interactive stuff, so top to toe and recovery position, then you're in full PPE. So that's the way that I've got around it. That's the way that I feel comfortable delivering it, and the feedback from the guys who've done the courses has been really good. So if you're worried about doing a course in a group again, then just ask those questions about how they're delivering those practical sessions.
Yeah, agree with that 100%, Mike. Lisa Reynolds has put she's attending the rock tape course in Birmingham soon. Can't wait. But she's doing it twice because she's attending another rock tape course. Can't wait. We'll definitely look into this one now.
Booked in for 2. Brilliant.
Booked in for 2. Yeah. That's a bit soon for a refresher, if I'm honest, Lisa.
Yeah.
So, have you got any more questions? I've got a couple that came in.
Let's have a look. I don't think many more came through from my guys, actually. Let me just check on here. Oh, actually, yeah, we did. Sorry, this is one from Dan. So how can we compete ethically in our marketing with the, I'll have to reword the question, with the rubbish out there promising the world? I think we kind of covered that earlier with, this is the kind of position we're in, isn't it? There's we want to be evidence-based, but then people aren't searching for evidence-based kind of practice, evidence-based language. So we sometimes have to use some of the language that we wouldn't really want to use because that's what people are looking for. That's how Google works. It's how the ads work to bring people in. So it's really tough. It's really hard. You have to make the change, I think, when they come into the clinic. So but if people have been to my clinic before, we've got a gym there. So when people come in, they're really surprised that it's not just a load of treatment rooms, because an osteopath doesn't usually have a gym. And I've had a few patients come in where the first thing I ask them is, what do you want to get out of today? What's your goal for today? And they usually say, I want to find out what's wrong with me. They never say, I want you to crack my back. They never say, I want you to crack my neck. They don't actually know what they're after. They just know that they need to see someone who looks as if they might be able to help. And so if you can give them that help, really the modality that you use, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I agree 100%. We don't go to a solicitor and tell them what we want them to do. We say, well, you're the expert, you tell me, how I buy a house or how I sell a house. They know the nuts and bolts of the industry like we know the nuts and bolts of our industry. So I agree with that. The question was about the marketing, wasn't it? And
yeah.
Now, if we go back to the original point about making sure your marketing is trying to attract the right type of client, I think ethically we're on the right track. I don't think there's any value in listing services myself. It's it's about making that connection. But interestingly today, and if we go back to Dr. Chris Norris's interview that Matt did about posture, when it's important, when it's not, I started reading today on Facebook. There's a picture of sway back kyphosis, 5 or 6 different postures, and I thought, should we be marketing this still? That there is some optimal posture, and I thought, I was disappointed. Then I read it a little bit further, and it was on the right lines. It was saying, there is no such thing as a good posture.
Brilliant.
If you've got a posture which is kyphotic, then you might have some tight muscles which might be restricting your breathing. And it was lots of mights and mays and maybes. And I thought, well, that's good, because my initial, I judged the book by its cover, and I was pleasantly surprised. So that message is getting across, I think.
Yeah, brilliant. And that's really clever, I think, because you've got that hook in with what people are looking for, and then actually you've got decent information underneath. So
yeah.
that's a real nice ethical way of doing it, and a good adaptation, I think, to also make yourself stand out, because people might have just left the image and then that is their advert, but going on to explain a little bit more might interest those people that have just heard the same stuff over and over again, and they go, oh, this person's different. So that, I think that's really good. It's very clever.
Are you going to read Catherine's out?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Catherine said a similar kind of thing. So I struggle with wording in marketing, as I feel I have to go against my beliefs in having to use words like poor posture or not to get general public interest. P.S. I'm terrible at marketing. I'm sure you're not. I think it's exactly that. Maybe kind of putting those headlines in there, because that's what people expect. But then giving that additional information, so that you can explain what we think knots are now, and giving that additional information to set you apart from the other guys who are just going, get rid of your knots. So I think we can use it to a certain extent.
Yeah, it's always useful to ask the client, what do you think is good posture, or what do you think knots are? Get an understanding for what their interpretation of the words are, what they mean to them, and then use better words to explain actually what's going on.
Yeah.
And Kat, if you want to chat about marketing, just schedule a call with me. I'm happy to do that.
Brilliant. And then Sarah Humphreys, she has said, I don't have a degree or anything in anything, but it's something that I have thought about doing for my own self-development. Any suggestions on pathway for this working full-time? Is the Open University credible? I think it depends on where you want to go, Sarah, and what you want to do. I have a lot of conversations with people about doing sports therapy degrees, physio degrees, osteo, chiro, and quite often they're not actually interested in the profession, but they just want to get better knowledge. So I think you first of all have to decide which way you want to go. So do you want to follow down a particular line to go into a particular profession, or do you just want to become better at what you already do? So what do you reckon, Gary?
Well, I have these chats several times a week, and the main reason people are enrolling on these osteopathic degrees, physio degrees, sports therapy degrees that I'm being reported to are that they think it's going to make them more employable, and that's not the case. If you want to do a degree to tick that box for personal development, then that's great. I would never advise you against doing that. Pick something that you're interested in. Something, let's just, pick something out of the air here. If we're working as a therapist, and we we are seeing, as a sports massage therapist, we might be seeing a lot of people suffering from stress and anxiety, and it might be an area of interest to you. So why not have a look at psychology? Why not have a look at some more of the social sciences degrees to find out whether it interests you? And I wouldn't enroll on a degree, you know, I wouldn't do it until I'd done a lot of research about how it's going to fit in with your life. My degree is in education, and I tick that box. It doesn't bring me any work, it doesn't get me any extra money, but I tick that box, and it was useful at the time when I was educating. So yeah, I'm happy to have a chat with you, Sarah. Again, schedule a call. Hi, Brian. Nice and late there, mate.
Better late than never. Thanks,
yeah,
Brian.
There's just a couple of things then that I've got left on my list. There was a member feedback was that during lockdown we had some really interesting coffee morning chats, and it's been brought up several times. So Scott said that he's going to bring them back, but they're not going to be coffee mornings. They're going to be, well, there is one this week for those people who would like to join us at 11 o'clock on Thursday. There's no specific topic of discussion. It's just to join in and let's see what happens. But what we're going to do with these coffee mornings, we're going to move them around, because not everybody can do Thursday at 11, not everybody can do Friday at 7 or Sunday at 9. So we'll advertise them with plenty of notice, and we will see how it goes. If they're well attended, we'll keep them going. If they're not well attended, then we will focus resources elsewhere. There was another question about Therapy Expo. Are we going this year? Yes, we are going. We have got a price point, which I believe is going to be £79 plus VAT. I'm just going to check with them tomorrow that's the best we can get. I'm going to try and get a cheaper option if I can. So yes, we are going to Therapy Expo. We have got 4 keynote speakers on the Wednesday and 4 on the Thursday. We have got a bigger stand than normal because we attract a lot of people apparently, and cause lots of chaos in the aisles. Yeah, Jamie, the best thing to do is send me a Facebook message to STA Gary with a preferred number and time to call, and I will schedule one for you. That's not a problem. The only other thing, Mike, just quickly, was somebody asked me if it was worthy of their fee to join an accredited register. Does it give any benefits? Would you like to answer that one, or do you want me to go?
Oh man, that's a whole other hour, isn't it? Is it worth it? I think initially, when you first start out, yes. I think when you get a bit further down the line, then I think membership to an association is more important than being on a register, because you've already developed your practice, and then being part of an association, you still have to maintain your continued professional development. So you have all of the same kind of stipulations that you would if you were part on a register. But it depends on the organization, I guess. But from speaking to all different professions, being on a register doesn't bring massive benefits. I think people see it as the kind of land of milk and honey. But one massive benefit, obviously, during the last year was the fact that regulated professions could continue to work, and there was no issue with that. So obviously that was a huge benefit. But now we're down the line, and all of the fighting that you did, Gary, along with the other members of the GCMT, I think now sports therapy is in a position where if they did try to do that, I don't think they could do that again. We've kind of set the boundaries now that at these levels, people who have those, I think it was level 4 and above, wasn't it, that they could continue to work, because you would expect them to follow professional guidance and work in a professional manner. Not that level 3s wouldn't, but those people can deal with pathology. So, which is really key as we've seen during this last year. So I think even though that was a benefit last year, I think there are things in place now where even that has kind of been negated. So it's yeah, I was having a chat with Chris Kitson the other day, and we were talking about the being on the osteopathic register and the kind of things it brings, and it looks as if there's going to be some changes with the osteopathy world with some of the proposals that are coming through. But anything like that takes a long time to change, and yeah, it's kind of swings and roundabouts really. It's a bit of a rubbish answer, but it kind of depends.
Yeah. So, I mean, just a bit of history then. The accredited registers in our industry were originally brought out as voluntary regulatory registers. CNHC held one. The FHT now holds one. BASRAT hold one for graduate sports rehabilitators, and that is part of your membership fee. The ones at FHT, they have everybody and their dog on there. It's become a bums on seats. I think the CNHC has gone the same way. It's not about upholding standards. It's about bums on seats to pay the 20 grand a year that it costs to maintain a register. I don't see any particular benefits. Some of the promises about doctors referring to members of accredited or registrants of registers hasn't come to fruition. I think it's an extra layer of bureaucracy. I think it's possibly a waste of your 75 quid or whatever, but it does have benefits. You can get exemption from licenses in the London boroughs, for example, but I'm already working on that with 38 boroughs in London so that our members can get exemption from special treatment licenses. There are places like Nottinghamshire where they are saying sports massage will always have a license, and I think they're just looking at ways of recouping income at the moment. But yeah, I mean, that basically gets everything off my list, Mike.
Brilliant.
Can I just finish by saying that one of my industry mentors, and I'm not blowing your trumpet here, Mike, much, but once said to me, we're not questioning what you're doing, we're questioning what you're saying about what you're doing. So if you are a soft tissue therapist, a sports therapist, use your skills. If you've done the appropriate training, got the qualification, you want to do the sports massage, the soft tissue release, the PNF, etc., do that. It's the way you explain the likely outcome, the likely benefit, and actually the mechanics of what you're doing is what research is questioning. Okay.
Exactly.
And I don't know if anybody saw this, because Matt Scar's book, he's not, I haven't seen him tonight, but he put it all over social media that the Massage Collective actually got one of their discussions retweeted by Mr. Meekins, a massage based one, because it was, it had evidence based to what they were saying. So, the world is changing. As you said, Mike, it's slowly, but the world is changing.
Yeah, definitely. Brilliant. Yeah. Good session. That went really quick. I hope it did for everyone else. Yeah. Thank you for your comments, guys, all the way through this evening. Thanks, Gary. That was a good chat. Really good. Cleared some things there. And yeah, it looks like we answered everything. I guess if anybody's got any further questions throughout the week, or if you think of anything, I mean, you know the STA anyway. We're really there to help guys. So if you got any questions, then pop it in the Facebook group, and then we can address those throughout the week, well, and beyond the week as well. So Matt's back next week. Who's the guest next week, Gary? Do you know?
I can't remember.
No, I was going to say I haven't got a list. I can't. Yeah, I'm all fingers and thumbs with this system. Yeah, so well, I'm sure it's going to be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matt's back next week, 8 o'clock. With he's gonna have a nice tan, isn't he? After being in the rain for a week.
He'll probably have a cold and a chest infection, won't it?
Yeah, probably. Brilliant. Cheers, guys. Thanks for joining in, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks, Gary.
Stay safe. Take care.